In the Bible, there is a story that Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden for eating the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The symbolic meaning of this story can be easily explained as follows. The human mind was originally peaceful, pure, and simple like heaven. However, as it began to discern between good and evil through knowledge, it lost its simplicity and peace. If we want to live in this world, especially in a complex and rapidly changing era like today, we need a lot of knowledge and experience. The amount of knowledge is immeasurable, including knowledge about various social systems and norms, knowledge related to occupations, knowledge about various civilizational techniques for living, etc. This knowledge is very useful and is something we must have in order to live properly in the world. But the problem is that such useful knowledge in life can be destructive. That is when knowledge is fixed as I-ego. Knowledge is a means of life. Originally, knowledge exists as a means to live in this world. It is not a goal in itself. It can be compared to a raft. A raft is a means of crossing a river. After crossing the river, you must abandon it. However, even after crossing the river, most people say that the raft is a waste and carry it around heavily. A raft can only be useful for river crossings. Likewise, people carry the burden of knowledge and are weighed down by it. People are tied to it and cannot be free. By putting a lot of knowledge into the I-ego, people are disguising themselves as something great. One is holding and obsessing over the virtual image reflected in the mirror, as if it were reality. There was a young man who was born in a poor shack neighborhood in the city. This young man was immersed in socialist theory during college and filled his ego with socialist knowledge, thinking that only that knowledge could save the world. Then, when he happened to live in such a society and experienced it for himself, he found out that it was completely different from what he had imagined. His ego began to shake at its core. Simultaneously, his revolutionary and destructive attitude also changed. Knowledge is not an original entity, but rather something that continues to change. If you cling to this knowledge, which is a means of life, as if it were an eternal reality and live thinking of it as I-ego, that I-ego will transform into a monster that destroys society and eventually even destroys itself. This leads to not only losing the peace of the world, but also the peace and simplicity of one's own heart, because the world is a reflection of our mind. If our mind is not peaceful, peace in the world cannot exist. There was a professor who had a doctorate. He took great pride in his academic achievements, and always found solace in his superior knowledge, regardless of the circumstances. In essence, his identity as a professor and intellectual was deeply ingrained in his ego. So whenever he discussed a topic with others, he always asserted himself strongly and challenged his opponents. Of course, his logic was very precise. His sense of I-ego felt very satisfying. But no people gathered around him. Just being next to him made me suffocate. It was a natural result because he used his knowledge more to strengthen his I-ego than to explore truth and teach his students. Humans are not free from knowledge. Let's take a simple example of how tied we are to knowledge. Now, you went to have a drink with your friends, but behind you, someone shouted, "Kang Wando guys are all dumb. Seoul guys are all feckless. Jeollado guys are all scoundrels. Gyeongsangdo guys are ignorant. Chungcheongdo guys are all insidious. Gyeonggi-do guys are all sneaky." The above region is the name of the region of Korea. What words aroused your emotions? Most people probably had a certain reaction when they heard words that apply to their hometown. It is said that in the past, in some bars, a fight broke out due to a similar problem, which even resulted in the death of a person. Let's take one more example. Where in the world are women as comfortable as Korean women? The husband will always give them money. During the day, they hang out with their friends, eat, and play as they please. Korean men don't know how to be considerate of women. I guess they think women are slaves. Which of these two words stimulated your mind? First, then you will be a woman. Second, then you will be a man. Why did this happen? It was because of your knowledge. As you grew up, you learned through experience what region you were from, and whether you were a woman or a man, and you identified yourself with those facts. Additionally, you learned Korean as you grew up. Such knowledge is firmly rooted in the I-ego in your heart. If you didn't know the Korean language, what region you were from, or if you were a man or a woman, there would be no reaction in your mind. This is a prime example of how much we are bound by knowledge. Indian Saint Jiddu Krishnamurti spoke of freedom from the known. But most of us are hardly free from what we know. This is because we hold on to what we know as if it were our true self, and live, believing it to be our true self. So, when someone challenges their beliefs, they engage in arguments, employing various forms of logic to avoid being proven wrong. Consequently, they feel very happy when they win and very upset when they lose. This kind of conflict is common in human interactions, leading to relationships tainted with animosity, suspicion, and enmity. Ideology, thought, these are all forms of knowledge. The pain humanity has experienced thus far, due to this conflict of knowledge, is indescribable. Even factions resulting from the conflict of ideas and opinions were created due to knowledge. Now the era of this ideology is coming to an end. It means that we humans have matured to that extent. This is because changes in the world are a reflection of the human mind. Nowadays, as we enter the 21st century, many people have a strong tendency to pursue a free life, finding not only occupational freedom, but also mental freedom, is becoming the main trend. However, we still suffer in our hearts because of knowledge, morality, ethics, religious dogma, and numerous other claims and theories. This knowledge resides in our minds in various forms, depending on the environment in which we grew up. This difference in knowledge divides people, causing them to fight and hate each other. The conflicts between different religions, various claims, diverse theories, etc., all contribute to this discord. While nature remains tranquil, the human world is perpetually embroiled in conflict. Knowledge is just knowledge. No knowledge is perfect. Knowledge is merely a stepping stone and a means to the truth. It is not something to be obsessed with. It is just one expedient. Knowledge is merely a finger pointing to the moon. However, we are not trying to see the moon, we are only fixated on our fingers. Instead of seeking the truth, we are only obsessed with knowledge. This obsession is what creates pain. Therefore, we need to take a neutral stance towards knowledge.